So let me, before talking about things that you probably don't want to hear about academic honesty, let me tell you a true story, and it won't take very long. About 10 years ago, a much more senior colleague to me at another institution realized that he needed to have heart surgery. And he realized that his surgeon was a former student of his. So he did something that I definitely would do if I was in the same circumstances. He went and pulled his former students' records and verified that they were a great student whilst they were with them, and had a certain amount of peace of mind before he went into the operating theater to have one of his former surgeons perform life-saving, life-preserving procedures on him. Could you imagine what his reaction would have been if he had found there had been academic honesty events for the person who would later be performing heart surgery on him? I've certainly taken this on board myself over the course of my academic career, and I thought about how comfortable I would be driving over a bridge designed and supervised by somebody who cheated their way through college, or attending meetings in a building designed and supervised by somebody who cheated at college. And these are not just hypotheticals. These things have actually happened, where you've had people who were imposters. And if you cheat in your academic qualifications or your professional qualifications, you categorically are an imposter. And sooner or later, you get found out. Hopefully, that isn't in a circumstance that leads to loss of life, but that absolutely does happen. So let's put this in another context. My time at IIT, there's a number of roles that I perform that I deeply appreciate and I love. And I have to say, being the designated dean of academic discipline is not often one of them that I enjoy. It is not something that I get up in the morning and think, great, I'm going to discipline a student and possibly end their academic career today. I can assure you that's not something I want to do at all. I'd much rather be fulfilling the 99% of my other roles, which is as an instructor, as a research scientist, as somebody who directs student success. The Academic Resource Center reports to me, academic coaches, and all of academic affairs, undergraduate and graduate academic affairs. And I'm frequently involved in empowering students to success and supporting students to success. But I can't really do that when a student violates the academic honesty policy, because they are actively detracting from the quality of the education that other students have paid a lot of money for, have spent a lot of time acquiring. And so it is something that I have to perform, that I have to verify and check when a student is accused of plagiarism or unauthorized collaboration, or some other previously undiagnosed form of academic honesty violation. That being said, let me tell you a little bit about what plagiarism is. Very simply, representing a piece of work that isn't your own. You can do that either in the information content, so representing a piece of information or a piece of work that isn't your own and taking credit as if it is your own. So for instance, you might quote somebody's work in presentation of your coursework and fail to verify that somebody else supplied that information. And it's not enough to say Google search, it's not enough to say Wikipedia. You really need to be specific and think in terms of how would the reader of the work that I'm working on be able to find the original quote, the original information, and give the reader, your instructor in this instance, more than enough information to be able to easily find the source that you're quoting from. And if you're literally quoting word for word, just put it in quotation marks so that it's clear that it's not just the information, but also the form of the writing. So plagiarism also deals with the actual expression of a sentence. If that was composed by someone else and you don't give them credit, that is academically dishonest. If an instructor has told you to work on a particular piece of work, or in an exam, that you are individually completing this work and you collaborate on the actual final form of that material, that is also a violation of the academic policy, academic honesty policy. When an instructor expressly tells you you can work together and this is a joint project, that's a different matter. That's allowed. Remember, your instructors are trying to assess your quality of education, how well you've learned it, and how well you've represented it. So if you don't follow that honest procedure, they can't accurately assess you, which is part of the reason why we have this policy in the first place. And then in conclusion, before I take any questions you may have, and I'm definitely available to you to answer questions or concerns you may have in this moment, and I don't mind being a couple of minutes late for my next meeting to do this. When I get a report of academic dishonesty regarding a student, I don't automatically believe it. I need to have data and I need to have proof from the instructor or from the other student who's reporting it or the other member of staff. Before there is contact with the student who's accused, we actually make sure that there is something, at least a credible allegation before even considering reporting it or marking it upon your record. And I have personally struck down reports that did not meet that criteria, and I've reversed previous decisions that also did not appear to have integrity in the accusation of academic honesty. So I want to give you that anecdote because this isn't all about being down on you. I want you to know that the Office of the DDAD also, even when it's dealing with academic honesty that often leads to some kind of disciplinary measure, is also on your side, especially in terms of making sure that your education is as valuable as the time and the money investment you're putting into it. So if you have any questions and if you have a couple of minutes available, I'm happy to answer them. And if not, happy to answer you at a later date.
So students, you are welcome to either drop questions into the chat and then we can field those that way, or you're welcome to unmute yourselves and ask questions. It looks like he has just a couple of minutes before he needs to run to that other meeting. And I will also share the link for Illinois Tech's Code of Academic Honesty in the chat at the end today in case any of you have not seen it and need access to it.
So there's a lot of black boxes, and I really feel like you're much more vibrant than the online experience. Hey, I just saw you a minute ago. So it's good to see you. How are you doing?
Pretty well, pretty well. Just, you know, we're coming to finals, so I'm sure everybody is just as stressed, a lot of work going on, but doing well, staying healthy, that's the important thing.
Absolutely.
I'm really pleased to hear that. Really pleased to hear that. Well, you really should have questions about what academic honesty is, and please take my word for this. Working it out now before you are accused is a much, much better choice. And I will help students, I will help instructors verify what's going on. But any incident that I end up reporting, so a first-time incident isn't just forgotten, recorded and forgotten. That is on your student record. If there's a second incident, the second incident could trigger a grievance hearing that could result in you being kicked out of the course, or being suspended from the university, or being invited to leave the institution. Now, that isn't necessarily what happens. There is a kind of severity scale here. But just be aware of that. And it's best not, first of all, discover what an academic honesty violation is when you first get reported. And that's part of the reason why I want to make it really clear that we're a resource to help you understand that in the first place. I should also make it clear that the office is actively engaged and watching and investigating. And we are and have taken a number of actions this semester alone. So please be engaged.
Could I bring up a point real quick that is in regards to academic honesty? So obviously academic honesty was something that was a bit more easy to verify and I guess prove in an in-person setting. However, I think a lot of students don't realize that even as we moved online, some professors started to prepare for it. There are a lot of resources that students have that extends to Chegg, Course Hero, this, that, and whatever. And some exams may be available on some of those, and you can get the answers on them. However, I know that a lot of professors are also aware of these resources. It's not something that only students have access to, and they're able to match and kind of check that. So just general warning for any and all students is that copying something more times than not can be easily traced back to you and can be easily proven. So it's not something that's like the boogeyman that people just talk about and then nothing happens. Like, it's something that is tracked and has been an issue in basically all departments as far as I've known. I've known a couple of people who have been accused and people who have been able to prove that they in fact didn't cheat, but there are others who are not able to do so. So just be wary and be forewarned, especially for your finals.
Very well said. And those third-party websites are transparent and obvious. And my office has subscriptions and has partnership with those websites. So I will tell you that we have done exactly what has just been said. We've detected it, we've proven it, and have acted upon it. So please don't do it. They're available for you to help learn the material. Just don't represent that as if it's your work. Do it for real. And I have to tell you, in terms of the effort in minimizing the risk at cheating, you're actually far better off just learning the material in the first place. I did a risk analysis and a calculation when I was in your career stage, and I worked out that to reach my tolerance, my risk tolerance, I would have to work about 4 times harder than learning it in the first place, and then I would have to cheat into perpetuity to continue the lie. It's not worth it. Well, thank you so much. I don't want to beat this dead donkey any further. Thanks for giving me a moment or two, and I'm happy to interact with the rest of you good people anytime.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for joining us, Dr. Orgel. We appreciate it.
Take care.
All right, so students, as Dr. Orgel exits the room, I want to make it very clear that the reason we're bringing this to you right before finals is obviously not to just scare all of you. It's not to have a punitive conversation, but academic honesty is something that is prevalent throughout all of academia, no matter what university you end up attending. And basically, the earlier that you become aware of these things and you start asking questions, obviously you're going to learn how to avoid issues, and we're trying to be proactive in helping you to do that. So just be aware of it. And then, as I said, at the end of the lecture, I have some different links that are going to be helpful that I'll definitely drop into the chat to make sure that you have the resources you need so that you're aware of Illinois Tech's academic honesty policy. And I will tell you, Dr. Orgel is wonderful about communicating with students. So if you have any questions that you just didn't want to ask here in this format, or maybe you wanted to look closer at the policy before asking questions, don't be shy about reaching out to him. His contact information is right here on the slide, and he is always more than happy to have conversations with students. So with that being said, friends, I am going to backtrack. We had to jump directly in earlier to make sure that Dr. Orgel had time to get through his portion. But basically, today's objectives are to do the following. So we just covered number 1, understanding Illinois Tech's policy regarding academic dishonesty. So you understand that there is a policy that basically shows you what the difference is between academic honesty and academic dishonesty, and that it is an offense that carries with various consequences depending on kind of the spectrum and the severity of the offense. So as I said, I will share the links to those policies later on. Definitely check them out because all students are held accountable for them. The next thing that we're going to talk about is learning and applying suggestions for building relationships with faculty. And these are just kind of a hodgepodge of tips and tricks that I've picked up after having conversations with faculty this semester, specifically about working with first-year students. And these are things that faculty specifically asked me to make sure that all of you are aware of. And so we'll cover that next. And then the last thing we will do is preview the upcoming first-year experience seminar topics of study for the spring semester. So I'm excited to share that with you. All right, popping right into building relationships with faculty. The first thing that I want to chat about is just etiquette, relationship building, and really maximizing your learning experience. So one thing that I want to point out is obviously in a virtual classroom, it's a very different dynamic. You know, as instructors, and I can tell you from my personal teaching experience, a lot of us really rely on the energy in the classroom to build relationships. You know, we rely on the ability to have students turn and talk with one another in the same space to create that energy that you need to have a positive discussion. Obviously, without that ability, virtual learning is very different in terms of keeping the energy in the room up, in terms of getting students engaged. And, you know, as much as you are feeling challenged in a virtual environment, I can assure you that your professors are feeling equally challenged with this virtual environment that we're in. So that being said, in order for your learning experience to really be something beneficial that you're going to get a lot out of, you really need to treat a virtual classroom as similarly as possible to an in-person experience. And there are certain things that you can do to ensure that that happens. So number one, obviously be actively engaged in the lesson. One of the easiest ways to do that is to turn your camera on. I know that it's really tempting to leave your camera off. You know, it allows you to multitask. You know, it allows you to not be at your best in terms of the way that you're dressed and things like that. And when you're tired and sleep deprived, that can be really tempting. But I will tell you that professors appreciate it when they can see your faces. Oftentimes when we're in this virtual format, it can often feel like you're talking kind of into a void, and you're not sure that anybody's listening. So put yourself in that position. So turn your camera on. Your professors want to see you. And keep in mind too that instructionally, you know, oftentimes professors are looking at your facial expressions for nonverbal cues to help them teach the information. So they're looking to see, do I see confused looks on my students' faces? Does this student look like they have a question? And oftentimes those nonverbals are what prompt them to go into additional explanations. So it is also to your benefit to turn that camera on, because it allows professors to have those nonverbal cues that they would in in-person instruction. Also, don't forget to be engaged. Ask and answer questions, even though it is a virtual format. If there's a chat, use that. If they allow you to unmute yourselves, do it. Use that chat to your advantage. Definitely avoid multitasking. This is something that I am tempted to do in a virtual format. I think all of us are, because we're busy, and it can be really tempting to be logged into class and doing other things at the same time. But friends, don't. There's actually a lot of research out there about multitasking in the brain, and showing that basically it's just doing a lot of things badly at the same time. So if you really want to learn the material, then make sure that you're actively focused on the class. And then, just as would be the case if you were in an actual classroom, try to find a nice separate space for logging into your classes that's free of other distractions. I know that all of these things seem like common sense, but I think the longer that we go in this kind of virtual format, I think everybody gets tired. I think we get Zoom fatigue, and I think that we just forget to do these things after a while. So here is your friendly reminder. In addition, friends, also make an effort to connect with your professor outside of class. This is important anytime, but especially in these virtual times. This is highly important. So obviously emailing back and forth is one way to connect, but if you can, take advantage of office hours. You know, whenever I was a college student, I made it a point to visit my professors during office hours 2 to 3 times a semester, even if I didn't need help with anything, just so I had a relationship with them and they knew my name. And that way, if something did come up and there was an emergency of some kind, I already had that positive relationship that I could depend on. So don't wait until you need help. Get in there, start building that relationship. And then in addition, just remember to be patient. You know, this is definitely, I think 2020 is the year for patience and compassion for everybody, given just everything that we've been living through. So just keep in mind that everybody's learning right now, especially, you know, your professors have this monumental task of taking these courses that are typically highly hands-on and project-based in nature, and figuring out how to make that work virtually. So they're learning just like you are. So like I said, this is just the year for some patience and some forgiveness. In addition, friends, these are just a few things to keep in mind just when navigating relationships in academia. So in terms of building relationships with faculty, I think the single biggest thing that you can do is to show up. Show up for your class times, show up for supplemental instructional opportunities. You know, if they have an SI instructor who is leading extra labs or exam reviews, take advantage of those things. In addition, something that I was specifically asked to point out by professors is email etiquette. Whenever you are emailing faculty. So I know that a lot of students will send emails to faculty and they won't specify what course they're in or what section number they're in. And you have to keep in mind that your professors are teaching undergrad, they're teaching grad level courses, they're teaching various courses, various sections, and they may not always be able to identify who you are immediately just based upon your name. So what I always do whenever I email faculty members is I identify my course and section number in the subject line of the email, along with what it is that I'm emailing about. That's going to allow them to pinpoint who you are and what you need very, very quickly, and they're going to appreciate that. In addition, don't forget to use a formal greeting and a closing as well. So always open up with "Dear so-and-so," and then finish with something like "Sincerely" or "Respectfully." The biggest thing is to learn your professor's title. Just like all of you are going through college to gain certain credentials that are going to really help to propel your careers forward, your professors also did the same thing and spent many years in school. And of course, titles are associated with those achievements and those accomplishments. So, keeping in mind that the title doctor is very, very different than using a general title like Ms. or Mrs. or Mr. So if your professor is a PhD, definitely use doctor in front of his or her name. It's actually very common in academia, especially for women faculty members, to often be called Ms. or Mrs. instead of doctor. And that is something that I think female faculty members are especially kind of attuned to. So they really appreciate it when students go the extra mile to learn their title and use that appropriate title in front of their name. If you're in doubt, just ask. Professors are going to appreciate it if you say, "Hey, do you prefer that I call you doctor? Do you prefer that I use your first name?" A lot of professors are more informal and will say, "Oh no, just call me by my first name." But just make sure that you're doing what it is that that faculty member prefers. If you're not sure, it's always safe to just to use professor. So Professor Orgel, because that's just kind of a general blanket respectful term. As I said before, in terms of building relationships with faculty, visit your professors during their office hours, even if you don't need anything. I always make it a point to go at the beginning of the semester when I'm taking classes so that they meet me initially. And then I usually go once around midterms and once a little bit closer to the end. But even if you don't need additional help, make sure that you build that relationship, because I guarantee you at some point something's going to happen where you have an emergency, you need some empathy, you need some understanding. And if that faculty member knows you and they already have a relationship with you, they're going to be a lot more likely to be empathetic to whatever it is that you have going on in your life. We already talked about being actively engaged, so I will skip over that. And then the last thing is to be professors really appreciate it when students are solution oriented. So if you have a problem, try to think through that issue on your own and actually go to your professor with some plausible solutions. There's a big difference between complaining and problem solving. So for example, sending an email where you're basically just airing your grievances about something is very different than sending an email stating your concern and saying, "I have 3 options of things that I think would work to solve this problem." So I know that faculty members really appreciate it when students say, "Hey, I have this concern, but these are the ways I think that we can work together to solve it." And if you kind of angle it that way and present it in a problem solving manner, once again, it's just going to make them a lot more likely, I think, to work with you and to be understanding with what's going on. So friends, in terms of working with faculty, those are just some general tips and tricks. If you have questions, feel free to let me know or drop them in the chat. For the sake of time, I'm gonna go ahead and pop forward and make sure that we cover the preview of upcoming spring seminar topics. So first thing that you need to know, friends, first year experience does go all the way through the spring semester. So when we resume classes in the spring, we will continue our Tuesdays from 12:50 to 1:20. And this time, the units are going to be shifting in terms of the things that we're talking about, from being a little bit more basic and focused on things that first year students need to know in transition. So you know that the fall semester was very focused on study skills. It was focused on helping you to learn the campus resources and things like that. But at this point, you're really starting to acclimate to the campus. And so the focus during the spring semester is more so going into those areas of just skills and strategies that are common to highly successful people, and people who just tend to be very well-rounded and well-adjusted in the way that they function in the workplace, within academia, and within society. So when we come back in January, the very first unit that we're going to be doing for about 4 weeks is all about positive psychology. And you're probably thinking, why psychology in a first year seminar? Well, the reason for that is because positive psychology is basically the study of life satisfaction and happiness. And right now, you are at a stage in your lives where you're making a lot of really important decisions that are impacting your daily life right now and impacting your future and what that is going to look like. And so we want to basically arm you with the knowledge of research-based variables and factors that actually contribute to higher levels of life satisfaction for people. And so we're basically going to kind of give you a toolbox of knowledge to help you understand how to create not only a college and career plan, but really just a life plan in general for yourself that aligns with your core values, your strengths, so that you can make sure that you're really taking charge of your own life in a way that's going to make you happy and satisfied with the direction that you're going. In addition, communication is a huge skill. You have no idea how many times in the field of admissions I've spoken with CEOs, with leaders of tech companies who have all said that it's actually very rare to see students who have graduated with STEM-related majors that have incredibly strong communication skills. And they always say that really whenever they find those STEM majors who did incredibly well in college, but they also have those communication skills, that is really the hook, line, and sinker in terms of getting those students hired. And those tend to be your leaders in the workplace. So we're going to talk about communicating in the real world, talking about how to communicate with people from different cultures, who have different belief systems, who have different values, how to code switch depending on who you're talking to, and then how we can apply that to making sure that you're successful in college and beyond, of course. And then the very last thing that we're going to cover is going to be all about social justice. And so we're going to be talking about those variables that are at play in society, things like power and privilege and oppression, and how certain societal factors tend to work against marginalized groups. And the reason that we're talking about that is because all of you right now are learning to be leaders in society, innovators. And we want to talk about how is it that you can basically take this knowledge that you're learning during your undergraduate degree, and how can you actually contribute to social justice and equal treatment for people in society through innovation and through leadership and technology. And so that's how we will close out the year. So the first year seminars are going to resume on Tuesday, January 19th from 12:50 to 1:20. We do not have a seminar next week, and the reason for that is because all of you need to focus on getting through finals. So this will be the final first year seminar for this semester. Also, just a very brief reminder, friends, if you are looking for some help with finals, don't forget to go to the ARC. I know that we talked about this last week. Definitely get into the ARC this week if you can. This is really the week that a lot of those study groups are going on, but then they also have extended hours as well through finals week if you need them. And friends, this coming Friday night, you know, we talked about how with finals, it is important to take breaks, to step away, to de-stress. So we are going to be offering a virtual movie night from 6 to 7:30 this Friday, December 4th. I believe we're showing Home Alone to go along with the holiday season. And you should be getting a text message reminder and an email about this. So if you're interested, take a break for an hour and a half, watch a movie and enjoy yourself. I'm sure that you'll be ready by Friday night to do so. Also, friends, no reflection journal this week. You need to focus on preparing for finals, so don't worry about doing those. And as I said, next first year seminar is going to be on January 19th from 12:50 to 1:20, and that's when we are going to be kicking off our topic of study about positive psychology and how these concepts can be relevant and helpful for your everyday decision making and life planning. So friends, that is all I have for you today. I'm going to stop my screen share, and then I'm also going to drop into the chat very quickly some of the, pardon me, helpful links that I mentioned to you earlier. So give me one moment. If you need to go ahead and exit, you're more than welcome to. And that is the last thing I'm going to do. So I have the link to the academic honesty policy that I'm going to drop into the chat because that's something that all of you need to be aware of. So there is that, friends. And then I'm going to go ahead and drop the links as well for, let's see, the ARC, just in case any of you need it. And that's all I've got, friends. So you are more than welcome to leave at your leisure. Have a wonderful finals week. You are all going to rock it. I know you are. And we will see you in January.
Thank you, Markie.
Bye.
Good luck, everyone.
Thanks, everyone.